So is the role of the CIO more important than it ever has been?
Now, I actually think that that's probably too narrow a question. And the reason I think it's too narrow a question is because in the last 20 years for sure, or perhaps even a bit longer than that, then the way technology has evolved and the criticality of technology to the safe running of a business has grown and grown and grown. And whereas in the 70s, for sure, certainly the 60s, and maybe for part of the 80s, business folk didn't really understand technology. And let's face it, a lot of IT people quite liked being mysterious, you wouldn't understand. And so there came a bit of a gap between IT and the other disciplines within business. And way back when, there wasn't a CIO, there was an IT manager, there was an IT director. So the emergence of the CIO has really kept pace with the way technology has revolutionized how we do business. And if you think about it, there are very, very few businesses now that could continue to function without technology. So the role of the CIO being on the executive team and being part of setting strategy and bringing to the table how technology can shape the business and unleash opportunities in the marketplace is now, it's as important as any of the other C-suite jobs. But it's part of the whole thing, not that role, it's the whole thing.
Yeah, sure. So, well, how about other C-suite roles that are now emerging, the likes of the Chief Data Officer, the Chief Digital Officer? Yeah. How are those impacting on the CIO role?
It's an interesting one because you know, you can look at these things in ways which are in conflict with each other. Oh, look, you know, get your tank off my lawn. My experience is it doesn't really operate like that. So, for example, in my last company, we had a Chief Digital Officer, and he was responsible for thinking from the outside in, from the customer in, how the business should be digitized. And he had a bunch of people working for him, but he didn't build the technology. In fact, my people and his people worked like that and did all the agile workings, the sprints and the testings and the releasing and et cetera, as an integrated team. Because the IT folk have got a set of skills, the business folk have got a set of skills, and together they can come together and do something pretty special. Similarly, looking at the data side of things, again, Royal Mail had a guy in charge of data, and he had a team of people working for him. The data scientists, the people who built the single view customer, which was a big delivery for us, were part of the IT function. And again, they just worked collectively. So I think you can always think about things as somebody's encroaching on my territory. Truth is, my opinion, this is all purely my opinion, but my opinion is if people start worrying about people encroaching on their territory, they're possibly not busy enough. Because actually there's enough in business, there's enough to be done, particularly for large corporations that inevitably have complex application landscapes. There's plenty for everybody to be busy and to help the company in a significant way.
So it can actually help you with your
I think
workload.
that they're symbiotic, the relationships. Now, there are some companies where I am sure, I can't name any particularly, but you have this notion of a shadow IT, where let's say you had a chief digital officer who said, I'm not going to that lot over there, I don't like them, I'll go and get my own IT people. That can cause a problem, and the reason it can cause a problem is that, again, if you're thinking in any sort of sizable organization, then you have to think of the entire application and infrastructure as almost like a patchwork quilt. And if you just build something here, then it's unlikely that that can be entirely independent of all the finance, billing, back office systems. And then you have a problem with how you integrate if you don't think about it in totality from the outset.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So that kind of brings me on to my next question in terms of the existing functions. So the roles that have always been around, the likes of the CMO and the CFO. How do you have to work in a different way to maybe you did 5 or 10 years ago in terms of strategically?
I think it's probably not. I think, well, let me rewind. The thing about having worked for 40 years is I can give you several generations worth of answer to that. So there was definitely a time where CFOs were inclined to think of IT as basically a cost sink. It's a burden on the business, it just costs money. But those times have gone really quite a long time ago. And again, there was a time where if there was a squeeze on funds, they might say, we don't really need to do that bit of IT stuff. But if I refer back to what I said a few moments ago, which is actually it's kind of difficult, other than maybe a newspaper shop, and even they have technology. Anyway, it's difficult to see how businesses of any scale could actually remain in business without technology being available, and that includes all the finance systems. And so my experience during the last 2 or 3 roles that I've occupied in the various companies I've worked in, the CFO actually is my pal, because if I need to do something, I just go and talk to them and say, this is why. Now, if you were a profligate person who just did stuff on a whim, I suspect you'd get a hard time. But if you're a serious business person and you have a mutually respectful relationship, they'll listen. They'll listen. CMO, the conversation has changed. I don't think the interaction has changed, but the conversation has changed because the channel mix is different, and how you think about getting something to market and publicising it is different now from how it would have been 15 years ago. But that's back to the point number 1, which is that technology has gone through such a revolution.
How do you see the role of the CIO changing in the next 5 years?
I'd love to be able to rattle off a straightforward, quick fire answer to that, but actually I think it's quite a complicated question. So you definitely need somebody whose voice is heard and who's respected, who can bring in ideas and information to bear at the exec table as part of devising and then implementing the business strategy. And so I don't see that changing. However, the question is, as the way we build technology, and with the emergence of, and it's not very mature yet really, the whole DevOps thing, and considering a future full of apps where companies won't write all their own stuff, they'll do pick and mix of things that other people have developed, and speed to market becomes more and more and more, then some of the kind of speculations that I have heard and participated in is the kind of concept of almost like a 2-tier CIO, where there's one who's in with the business and it's all about digital and future and agile and fast. And then there's their right-hand person, man or woman, who's responsible for maintaining all the back office, all the major estate that exists. It's actually, who can predict the future? One thing for sure is the pace at which things are changing means that that a CIO, because you tend to be very busy working with other parts of the business, a CIO has certainly got to equip themselves with people within the business that are scanning the horizon and working with third parties, third-party suppliers, to understand what's out there, so that they can keep current with this explosion of capability. You can't take it all on. There isn't a company in the world that can do all of it. But knowing and trying to pick out what are the nuggets that will actually help your business and drive it forward.
Yeah.
It is surely faster paced now than it was when I started on this road 20 years ago, on the CIO road 20 years ago, because there's just more out there.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting, because that means that you have less time to maybe spend on developing new skills. You might be learning them on the job. But is there still time for professional development at all? Are there any skills that you can still learn while you're a CIO?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can think of skills in a variety of different ways, and so if I think of, obviously there's the personal development and the managerial and the business type stuff. You can do that. CIOs, by and large, are not people who write code, and they haven't got time. I wrote code for the first 14 years of my career, but I haven't written any code for about 25 years. And if I did now, it would probably be dangerous. So maybe not. But a technical skill, for example, that I believe has really come to the fore in the last 10, 15 years is the whole thing of working with multiple parties. Because, again, with the explosion of technology, there's always quite a lot of integration required to bring things together and make sure that they'll work. And learning how to work with multiple third parties and getting all those different groups of people aligned on the end goal, which is delivering that product at whatever time. Nobody comes into this world knowing how to do that. You have to learn how to do it. And you can't even decide, I'm going to be really good at this, because you need to do it with the people with whom you are working. And so you've got to bring them with you. So there's a whole thing. And you might say that's not a technical skill. It is really, because these arrangements are contractual. And if you don't do it right, then you don't get what you need, you don't get what the business needs, and everybody spends their time in litigation. So it is quite a core skill, I think, that has emerged, as I say, over the last 10 to 15 years.
How important do you think it is to bring in new technologies into the workplace?
I actually think it's very important indeed. And the reason I think it's important is because people work with people. And we've had quite a long period of time where communication was done via email. I actually sat in buildings and in offices where I would send you an email rather than stand up and go and talk to you, because that was how you did things. It's pretty stupid in my view, because actually we probably will get it faster resolved, anything resolved faster if we talk to each other. But with the emergence of unified communications, things like being able to share documents with multiple edits, the whole instant messenger, being able to publish things to third parties, know where somebody is, then actually, because people are very busy and they're sitting at their desk, they're actually able to reach out in a way that makes the whole thing very much more personal. And it helps. It really helps. And so then there are the kind of tools where people are able to publish information, and somebody asks a question and they get an answer, and the answer is scored so that the most relevant one is at the top and the less relevant ones are below. So you get more shared learning. It's really great. It's really great.
With these existing technologies and all of these new emerging ones, the likes that we keep hearing about, IoT sensors, biometrics for security,
Yeah.
virtual assistants perhaps. Does a CIO have to be involved in all of these decisions of which ones to bring into the organisation?
I'll tell you what you do have to be. Yeah, you have, because the problem with when this stuff emerges is that you quite often get camps, true believers. So one set of people would die in a ditch for product A, and another set of people would die in a ditch for product B, and they would happily fight and scrap about it for 6 months. Actually, very often, when you go and look at the features and capabilities of product A and product B, they're kind of 90% the same. So in the end, there's a role which is called, and I have done this, I will confess, you have until Friday to agree which way we're going, otherwise I'll pick. And that's a pretty good way of driving to a conclusion. I've never actually had to pick.
That's good.
So, the role of the CIO, I think, is, first of all, as I said earlier, to be aware that these things are on the market and to know enough about them to understand how they can help the business and actually make sure you haven't got a white elephant. And then to work within IT around how it might work. But also, there's a role of talking to the other people around the exec table and making them aware of it and how it could help their part of the business and how it can help to bring down, how use of some of these tools can help to bring down some of the silos between various functions.
A lot of these technologies can also help with flexible working, which is is something that seems to be on the up for all organisations in the UK. So
yeah, it's been on the up for the last 25 years.
Yeah, so
it's quite interesting.
Are we at a stage now where the technology is sophisticated enough to really not need to come into the office?
I think there are a couple of things that probably militate against that. So yes, you can. I've worked from home part of the time for years and years and years. But there are a couple of things, and one is that organizations, businesses have to be mature enough to understand that seeing somebody sitting at a desk is not proof that they're working, and equally not seeing somebody sitting at a desk is not proof that they're lazing around. So that you have to be able, the organization has to be mature enough to operate in an outcomes-based way. And not all organizations are, many are not, in fact. So, it's very often the case where that technology arrives, but the culture change, the behavioral change that's needed to take full advantage of it is slower to come because people are not great at changing. They just aren't. So I think that's one thing that needs to be acknowledged. I think the other is a very human thing, which is that people do like interacting with people. They enjoy bitching by the coffee machine. They do. It's human beings. And so probably you could see occupancy rates, so having more hot desking because there'll be fewer people in. But I don't see in the near future a world where everyone works at home.